welcome to the ATP Project. You're with your hosts, Matt and Steve today.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about invisible illnesses again.
Like
but this
Jeff,
time,
he's invisible today.
He is.
Where's
He's
he?
not. He's
Not
not
here.
actually invisible. He's just not here.
No, he's off.
That's a different invisible illness we'll talk about of Steve's problem.
Yes, well,
Thinking there are people in the room that aren't.
Oh.
The invisible illness we're talking about today is anxiety and panic.
yes.
Which is a very important topic, becoming more and more important these days because there's so many stress triggers.
Yes.
There's so many people just stuck in this defensive mode.
I know.
And we spend a lot of time talking about defensive mode, and we need to talk about some of the causes. So today we're going to talk about what anxiety is, for starters. We'll talk about through the symptom picture of anxiety, so you know if you're one of those people that are suffering through it or with it. We're going to talk about some of the causes.
Yep.
Physical, mental and spiritual. We're going to talk about some treatment options as well. And then what we're going to do is have a bit of a discussion about the psychology of it all. Like, we're going to talk about spirit. It's very important for people to understand the difference between ego and spirit, unconditional love, those sort of things, and for people to maybe self-reflect, because what we're going to talk about today is a lot of stuff that you can do, physical things you can do, supplement-wise, food-wise, exercise, sleep, all those important things. It's very, very important that when you're working on those physical and mental planes, that we also acknowledge the spiritual plane. Now, when I say spirit, I'm not necessarily just talking about religion. A lot of people, when I use the word spirit, they automatically assume I'm going to talk about religion.
The third person, invisible person in the room.
Yeah.
Whatever they're, Allah or Jesus, whichever one you're into.
So in that instance, I'm not going to so much talk about that, but when I talk about spirit in this sense, and when I talk about the physical body, not physical body, when I talk about your body and I talk about spirit, I'm talking about emotion and bias and belief and cultural sort of biases and cultural belief systems that are actually changing the way you perceive the world.
Exactly.
And how you can actually self-reflect and have a look at yourself and think, is there some things that I'm doing to create this self-perpetuating cycle and some things that I could possibly break? And if that is you, if you are one of those people today that has a bit of an awakening or a self-realization that, hey, there are actually some bad habits I've got, or there's some ideas that are stuck in my head that is keeping me in this way, it's not actually something to feel bad about. It's definitely not something to feel anxious about. No. It's something to feel happy about, because through self-reflection, we can actually make some corrections.
Absolutely.
And
because
you don't even know, man.
And it's a great date to do it, because it's the 12th of October today, which means it is Mental Health Week.
I was going to say Thursday.
Friday. This is released tomorrow.
Oh, shit. Friday.
That's
what
why
is
I
the
said
date
the 12th.
today?
It's the 11th today, but this is going to be released on the 12th, so it's really the 12th today.
See? All these things. The sort of things that some
That
people
gets you
might
anxious,
be
doesn't
anxious
it?
about.
Yes.
Not me. No, I have no idea what day it is.
So it's Mental Health Awareness Week. So this is why we're here doing this.
It's
as one of the
obviously
other.
Calendar Awareness Day.
Yes.
Anyway, so what we're going to do, we'll get stuck into it on this wonderful Friday.
Yes, there
morning.
you go.
Is it morning or afternoon we release this?
Afternoon. About 5:30.
Friday afternoon, a couple of hours past beer o'clock.
Yes.
Filmed here in Australia. So,
there you go. Now
we digress.
We're on the plane. So
Steve,
anxiety, yeah.
What's anxiety?
Anxiety is a state that is actually either healthy or unhealthy, because it is healthy to be anxious in certain situations. Like if someone threw a big black snake on me, I would be anxious, wouldn't I?
Yeah.
And I would go, oh my goodness, and I would run and poop my pants, and the snake would, you'd get away from the snake.
Yeah,
now, if
that's
you
a
threw
good strategy of yours, Steve. So part of your defensive mechanism is pooping your pants
to lighten the load.
To scare away the snakes?
Yes. And to lighten the load so you can get away from the animals. But let's say you threw a snake on someone and they didn't get anxious.
Yeah.
And that'd be stupid, because the snake would go there and just, bite you or something.
Yeah.
So their anxiety can
and they
be...
would die.
They would die.
Yeah.
So anxiety is a really healthy response in some instances. But what we're going to be focusing on today is the unhealthy anxiety, because before a podcast, we're all sort of getting all the papers ready, all the science, looking at all the biochemistry, getting a bit anxious about it. Yeah. And that's fine. That's actually healthy.
Yep.
But if you're anxious about things that aren't really going to threaten you, then that is unhealthy. So, for example, you could have a baseline of anxiety because you've got bad bugs in your gut, for example.
Okay.
Yeah. So, you got the wrong gut bugs, and rat studies have borne that out. So you could have just a few things going on.
So back to your snake story.
Yes.
Not the pants bit.
No.
But the snake story. In that snake story, you mentioned that some people, when they get thrown a snake, they might launch a survival response.
Yes.
They get the hell out of there, use whatever strategies they've worked out or acquired, and survive and potentially breed.
Yes.
Others that may have that same stress trigger don't react, don't survive, don't get a chance to breed. So that's why there's so many people out there today suffering with anxiety. They're the survivors.
They are the survivors. We've got to remember that if you're hunting in the grass and you hear a rustle of a big predator and you don't react from an anxiety point of view and a stress point of view, and you just go, bugger it, and it comes and eats you, you don't feed the gene pool, and you don't have,
So we know your body can't afford to wait to see what the stress is, because it's not actually the stress that our body reacts to. It's our immune or our inflammatory response to that stress.
Exactly.
So regardless of what that stress is, someone that's acquired, inherited a survival technique or a survival mechanism or a predisposition to launch a fast survival defense, in today's day and age, where we're exposed to things like electromagnetic radiation, allergies, infections, weird viruses, poor gut health, compounds in foods like pesticides, fertilizers, other chemicals, all those additives, all that sort of stuff, pollution, all those sort of things may be coming into our body. All of them, to a varying degree, may be activating a stress response.
Of course, and you add to that healthy stresses like finances.
Yeah, exactly. So on top of that, the phone might ring, we've got bills to pay, we know we need to, we've got expectations of those around us, all those sort of things.
Could be married.
Yeah, we could have that sort of dramas, your children and that sort of thing. So all of these things together will trigger a stress response. And if you have inherited or acquired an ability to survive a life-threatening stress, you will utilize those skills to survive against that non-life-threatening stress.
That's exactly right.
Meaning that in today's day and age, where we have less, it depends where you are and who you are, but we have less life-threatening stress. The bloke that sat there and had that snake thrown on him and he didn't react, they're the ones that are actually look like the cool, calm, confident people of today. The people that look like the anxious, panicked, nervous people were actually the warriors, the survivors, the people of the past.
Yeah, because if you weren't anxious of a big tribe attacking you, you just get wiped out.
Yeah.
We won't build a fort. Don't worry about it. It'll be all right. The danger will pass.
So moving forward, the people that are living the longest and they're the ones that react the least.
Exactly. And the nowadays it becomes that fine line between, is this a real threat or is it a threat that people say, you're just overreacting or something like that. And the body isn't really, programmed that way. It's programmed to react so you survive the threat.
That's as an example of some of the acquired stress mechanisms that might have led for people to survive in the past, that's not so good now, might be the methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase, the MTHFR gene polymorphism.
That's right.
Because that means that they can't activate COMT, or can't utilise COMT, which is catechol-methyltransferase. I'm not using any swear words or anything in here. So MTHFR, I almost did that. MTHFR gene polymorphisms means that a particular part of your detoxification neurotransmitters is inhibited, which means, and also estrogens, which means you get more stress chemicals and more estrogen than the other person. In the past, through times of feast and famine and survival stress, that was an amazing skill to have more estrogen during famine, to be more fertile, but to also have more stress chemicals available to help you launch a survival response was actually a positive trait. So a lot of people they believe like 1 in 4 or 1 in 10, I don't know which the stats is right, but they reckon a lot of people have that genetic polymorphism, that SNP or that SNP, single nucleotide polymorphism. I'm using some big words today. This is usually your bit.
No, I love it. It's good.
So basically what happens with that, you acquire a genetic polymorphism. Today they talk about it as a genetic defect.
Yes.
But it's not a defect. It's actually a positive trait that you survived. you listed an interesting fact about that genetic polymorphism once, that you build more muscle and strength too.
There
wasn't
is.
it?
The 1296 polymorphism means that you are up to 36 times, or 30, not times, percent stronger.
Yeah.
And you know, so these polymorphisms means you've got more, catecholomethyltransferases get rid of the adrenaline and that. And if you've got more of that adrenaline floating around, you can have more strength. So that's a survival mechanism, because genes are not so bad. Like for example, you know,
they're all there for a reason.
Like people with dark skin, for example, and Caucasians like us, we would survive in colder climates more because we get more vitamin D. The darker skin would survive more in the tropics because they get more sun, but you know, they're more protected from melanoma.
Yeah.
So there's reasons for genetic reasons, and if they weren't, there's no real bad genes, because they would have died off.
Yep.
You know, if you couldn't make vitamin D from the sun, sorry, you didn't. You just died off.
Like if infertility ran in your family.
Yes.
But so we've done some podcasts before on these genetic polymorphisms. We've talked a lot about the MTHFR, so you can look up those podcasts. And on our webpage, you can go there and use the search bar and just put in these words like anxiety, and you'll see all the different podcasts and blogs that come up talking about it. So these people inherit this technique. Also, some people acquire a technique to be more stressed, more predisposed to anxiety and panic.
They do.
So we're looking at like early life events and prenatal. So after conception, like what is it, 5 weeks after conception, the sympathetic nervous system is starting to form.
Yes.
And it's starting to go through and say, fight or flight, okay? What's this environment? Is it fine? Which is why the most common causes of miscarriage is stress and then immune activation, such as a urinary tract infection.
Yeah.
They're the main causes for miscarriage, because automatically there's this survival mechanism in this unborn baby, assessing the situation, decide if it's do I have to be pre-wired for survival when I come out, or is it just a bad time to come out? Should I finish this now because of the survival mechanisms? So these things are in early, but perinatal events and prenatal events and all that stress around those pregnancies or your parents might have had and all that sort of stuff, but that could be infection, that could be abuse, that could be any of those things, but you can be born pre-wired.
Yes.
And in that instance, you are hyper-reactive to stress.
Which
you
could
start that way.
Which could help you survive in a stressful environment.
Yeah, exactly. But in a non-stressful environment, if you're coming out into an environment that's full of electromagnetic radiation, pollutions, toxic foods and rubbish and injections and white lights and all that sort of stuff, it's enough to trigger a stress reaction that you kind of have to manage then going forward.
And your wired stress. And normally the body can overcome this. You've got different layers of your brain, and I won't bore you with details. You've got the rational neocortex, which mammals typically are born with, which is the outside of the brain. The cortex means the outside, like your adrenal cortex. And that gives you processing, so you can actually assess a stress and go, it's a stress, no, it's not. And if that's functioning well, that's good. Then you've got your limbic system, which is the one that says you haven't got time to react. It's like you hear the rustles and you jump, and then you assess and go, it's just someone throwing a stick, and everything calms back down again. And eventually you've got the right at the very basal part of the brain, which sets your mood. So, for example, if you're going through the bushes, your mood's like this all of a sudden. And so there's these 3 layers in the brain that your body adapts to. So hopefully your cortex is enough to rationalize stress, but sometimes it's not and hasn't been programmed, or you could have a learned experience. And an example was, an ambulance officer. That has been going the job for 20 years. They've seen all sorts of terrible things. They come across a terrible thing and they go, okay, well, we better fix them up, because this is my day job, 40 hours a week. You and I come across that, we go, oh, God, that's horrible. People pass out, and it's like, no, they've just, broken a leg or something. Their leg's a bit bent, and, it's for them, it's so you can adjust to stressful situations.
And so also so this part of the brain that you're talking of, it's gathering all sorts of data from your outside environment. It's also getting data from your internal environment. So if you've got immune activation and you've got cytokines like interleukin-6 and that sort of stuff floating around, they're getting released on nerve endings. Histamine makes you extremely alert. It's another thing that's recruited as part of a stress response. So someone's got allergies, they've got immune problems, they've got gut-derived inflammation or injury-derived inflammation. All those signals are going to the brain saying, hey, there's something not quite right. Our body's telling us there's pain. Our body's telling that, as far as your brain knows at that point, it could be that your arm's been bitten off or something. Now, Other things, just quickly while we're talking about that part of the brain, it's also trying to work out where you are in space and time.
Yes.
Okay.
Limbic system, yeah.
Yeah, a big part of that brain, that's a very primitive part of the brain that it's trying to, it gathers part of that data that you're gathering from your environment, whether someone's trying to attack you or whether you perceive that they're attacking you, plus all those other internal things we discussed and pollutions and whatnot. Your brain works out where you are in space and time, where it gets 3 major points of data. It gets data from your ankles that tells you where you are on the ground and where you're moving and walking, or whether the ground's moving, and that sort of stuff. It gathers data from your ears, which are like your spirit levels. They actually have little flakes of calcium, and I remember those little snowy things. You know, that's what your inner ear. You know, I just did that and said little snowy
snow
thing.
cones. I think they're called.
No, that's the thing.
That you eat. Yeah. What do they call
those things? You know, you
shake
usually got a picture of Santa Claus in a little castle, and you shake it up. Disneyland ones or something. Anyway, snow globes.
That's it.
Yeah, that'll do. We're calling them snow globes. If not, we patent that. We've got copyright, and I'm going to invent snow globes.
Of course.
Anyway, that's what your inner ear does, and the receptors pick up on the moving of the snowflakes, and it determines whether you're swinging and swishing or moving and that. So your brain's getting data from your ankles, your ears, and your eyes. The eyes are telling you where you are because your eyes can find a point of reference. So if your brain's already confused because you've got inflammation and immune activity, acid-base imbalances, anemias, low blood volume, signals coming from your body to say that you're not getting enough fuel or oxygen, all those stresses, and then all of a sudden, if you've ever got problems where your feet are not on the ground, like if you're wearing heels all the time and you've got no point of ankles and heels touching the ground, or we're always wearing shoes, but even with shoes sometimes we can kind of get a feeling whether the ground's moving or not.
Yes.
We get a stable state. So some people have feet problems, ankle problems, and that sort of stuff, which can significantly trigger anxiety because you lose your bearings in space and time. Crowds, that's one of the bad things about crowds. If you can't find a horizon, if you can't find an exit, then your brain doesn't know where you are in space and time. If you don't find a point in nature, this is why trees and horizons and landscapes so important, because when your brain sees trees and mountains, it knows where the horizon is, it knows where the land is, and it can use that point of data with the data from your ankles and then the data from your inner ear to tell you where you are in space and time. Any one of those points of data that's missing, you can trigger an anxiety because it doesn't know if you're falling.
Exactly.
Like, for example, motion sickness. A lot of people that get anxiety get a lot of motion sickness. You put them in a train facing backwards or something and they're useless. Shopping centres and all those sort of things where they can't get that point where there's too much data in the way.
Can we talk about fishing now?
Yeah.
Getting seasick.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a conflict between what you see and what you feel.
Yeah.
Like you're in a boat and you see you're in the boat.
Yep.
And you're looking around, nothing's moving, but you are, and it's like that conflict causes nausea.
Yeah.
And so that's a symptom. And you mentioned the uneven ankles.
And that's why the way to fix seasickness in fishing or manage it is to find the horizon. Same with travel sickness in the cars. You know, if you shut off into a little cabin or something like that, that's when you feel queasy. If you can find the horizon and you get a point of reference there, then your brain can assess with the other bits of data.
And the brain can reason it.
But also too, and a lot of people out there are sitting there and they'll be thinking, man, I've never been the same since. I'm always looking for that. I'm waiting for people to say, I've never been the same since. And if they say car accident, then they talk about the stress and the fear of that car accident. I also say, how'd your neck go? Did you get whiplash? And that sort of stuff. And then we can do the inner ear system. If you damage your inner ear through trauma or inner ear infections as a child or something, if you've actually got problems with your inner ear, there's a point of data that's not getting into your brain. Your brain doesn't know where you are in space and time. And then when your eyes and your ankles aren't giving good data, such as lying down in the bed at night, or when your eyes are shut or in the dark, you get scared of the dark. You get fear, anxiety, and all those weird things. And you may be saying, it's never been the same since that trauma, or since I was abused, or since I was in an accident, or since I had that head knock, or whatever. And then we're assuming that it's like a post-traumatic stress disorder, but which it probably is, but there'll be an element of that will be associated with a structural problem, which is your vestibular system.
Yeah.
And the reason why I tell people about this is because when we're working on a campaign to treat anxiety, listen to the stuff we've already mentioned. Could be immune, could be acid, could be gut, could be vestibular injury, could be dodgy eyes, could be bad feet. Any of those sort of things can contribute to it. So you don't want to go through and just try to manage your brain chemistry and not look at all these other things.
Absolutely.
For example, if you were to go to a physiotherapist and ask them to do a vestibular injury assessment, and help you with a vestibular injury rehabilitation, then you could actually remove a major cause of anxiety, especially if you're one of those people that get the anxiety and panic in crowds, travel, areas that you can't find that point of reference, and along with that, usually clumsy or scared in the dark, get the bed spins when you lie down. They're all signs of this vestibular injury thing. It's a very simple test you can do at home by yourself. Oh, it's probably best
someone else with the finger in the eye. Oh, in it.
Wait, what the hell are
you
you
move
doing?
your finger like that across and watch the eyes.
Man, every time I do that, I watch my own finger. I really struggle to do it because I say, yeah, watch my finger. And then I'm just sitting there watching my finger. I'm supposed to watch their eyes, but I'm like, oh, let me try that again. This time I'll watch your eyes.
And you watch the eyes and they might go like that, and that's bad.
Yeah, the funny thing is, first time I did it was to actually, the first time I did the vestibular injury assessment, I was with obviously a lecturer, someone teaching me how to do it. And because I was watching my own finger, they actually diagnosed me with a vestibular injury. Because they go, oh man, do that again. Look at your eyes. I said, no, I was supposed to be looking at yours.
Oh, that's funny.
And they come from like head injuries from footy and that sort of stuff, which did definitely trigger a lot of anxiety. So tell you what's funny, you go through to a physiotherapist, and if they do say you've got a vestibular, what I was going to say, what you can do at home, is if you shut your eyes and you're wobbly, so you just try to stand there barefoot on the ground, shut your eyes, and if you feel like you're falling, open your eyes and don't fall. And then what you do, or do it on top of a mattress or something.
Yeah, let's take to the extreme.
And then what you do is you close your eyes, lift one foot off the ground, and you might feel yourself falling again, and then swap legs. If you keep falling to the same side, then that's the side that usually got your ear injury at.
Okay.
And then what the physios don't, no one really goes in and fixes the ear, but what they do is they give you a series of exercises to do to desensitize you to the anxiety associated with it. And usually it's like juggling like coloured feathers up and down ramps. It's all about getting your eyes and your ankles out of the comfort zone to see what your ears are capable of doing.
I love it. Yeah, no, good fun. It's quite amazing that you know there's great diagrams on the anatomy of anxiety, and it does relate to those sort of we call them mixed signals to the brain.
Yep.
And that confusion, because even mixed signals can cause anxiety.
Yeah.
Like, what's really going on here? You know, it's like, oh God, I don't know what's going to. And the unknown you've talked about as being anxious.
Yeah.
And you know, I hope our sound recorder, Matt here, Vanessa, doesn't mind me saying this, but he said, I was anxious about his shoot yesterday. And then when he got to the shoot, he realised it was all going to be fine. And he wasn't anxious anymore.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely normal.
Yep.
Because anxiety keeps you a bit, oh yes, I better watch out. I don't know what's coming up ahead. And you know, you're going through that dark cave with a little torch, and all of a sudden, I'm out of the cave. Anxiety goes away.
Yeah.
Problem is, some people's anxiety doesn't go away because, as you said, it could be a gut-derived thing.
Yeah.
It could be an allergy because histamine.
Now you're talking physical plane.
Yes.
So on the physical plane, you might have actual chemicals floating through your body from what you said, the gut, the immune, toxins, all that sort of stuff, that is amplifying your stress response. Mentally, we could also have acquired some techniques or some fears from past experiences and things like that makes us worry and that sort of stuff as well. And then on the spiritual plane, our belief systems, our confidence and our ego can really be a massive problem. I want to talk a lot about ego towards the end. I don't want to mix up the so we keep on the physical plane for now.
Plane?
Because what we can do here, we looked at the brain and all the data that's coming into the brain. Now, of about 2 million points of data, we consciously pick up on about 7. The rest of it goes into the brain, but there's about 7 points that we can pick up on. Well, and then of those points, we can actually choose to focus on those points. So if you've actually if you acknowledge the fact that of the data coming in, the 7 points of data out of the 2 million that you're going to register, why we don't want to be registering the fear aspects. We don't want to be registering that. What you can do though is you can fill up your brain with positive things. So when you get this data coming through, if your immediate thing is, what's going to happen on Facebook, or how do I look, or what are they expecting me, of me, or what's the image that's been portrayed by myself or someone else, all those different things. But if you actually go through and consciously think, okay, I'm going to make sure I find 7 points of data that's not going to trigger anxiety when you go into those sort of situations, which might be, like I said before, work with your survival. If you're one of those people that's got a survival mechanism, work with it.
Yeah.
Understand your nerves are trying to trigger a series of events that help you survive.
Yeah.
If you fight against those, you're going to get more anxiety. Your body's telling you to find the exit and find the horizon, just quickly get that point of reference. So when you go into a stressful situation, make sure you know where the exit is.
Well, yeah, exactly. And you mentioned about those points of reference. While I was watching you and listening you say that, I noticed in the background Jeff's arrived.
Yep.
So it's like he'd been away, just in the background there.
Yeah.
And that's good. Jeff's back safe.
Yeah.
It's like it's a tiny part of data, but it's gone in, and it's like, oh, good. He's fine.
Yeah.
And I noticed on the whiteboard there's nothing written there. I'm thinking, oh yeah, that's right, because sometimes we have meetings here.
Yeah.
So that's less anxiety.
Yeah. So you're removing anxiety.
Removing anxiety, and
so
it's great. That's what you mean.
So with those points of data that you're trying to take in, find the horizon. Make sure your brain knows where you are in space and time. So now that I've taught you how the brain knows where you are in space and time, it requires your eyes, your ears, and your ankles. There's not a huge amount you can do about your ears in a situation. But if you make sure when you go into a room that makes you feel nervous and you're starting to feel a bit of anxiety, first thing to do is find a point of reference. Find a window where you can see some nature. You can always find joy in nature, but you can always have a point of reference because that's our Earth. So once you find out where you are in space and time on Earth, then you're less stressed. Then feel your feet. Get your feet into the ground. People talk about grounding and all that sort of stuff. Grounding's important. We talk about the negative charge, but I'm talking even with you in a situation where you're wearing shoes on carpet on the second or third story of a building. If you feel the ground and you know where the ground is, and then your eyes, at the same time as you're concentrating on your feet feeling the ground, your eyes get a point of reference, you've actually taken a lot of stress off your brain by aiding your vestibular system to tell your brain where you are in space and time.
Exactly.
That's one major stress you've removed off yourself if you're one of those people.
It's amazing because you mentioned, solid earth is so important.
Yeah.
And it depends on your circumstance. For example, if you go surfing, on a very unstable platform that's speeding down a wave, that can be relaxing because you're aware that you're on an unstable surface. However, if you're walking along and the earth shakes, like an earthquake, then that would be extremely stressful.
Yeah,
so you've got that unstable, but as long as your brain and all the signals are coming in are positive, like I'm on a surfboard, I'm looking at the beach, perving on the girl in the bikini, I'm doing all these sorts of things, everything's good. And so it's all about, as you say, making sure your feet you know where they are. And it can be on a second floor of a building or whatever the case may be. And I think this ties into this study that I came across. It's a big review article just published in the Journal of Affective Disorders. It's actually not even published till 2019. This is the first 2019 study that I've come across.
Wow.
Yeah, look at that. 2019. So it's going to be, we're so advanced here, we're going future in time.
Wow,
so
we're even in tomorrow for
I don't know how I got
podcast
access.
and next year for our references.
Exactly. But the title says sedentary behaviour and risk for anxiety. So basically it says if you're sedentary and you don't do those movements and you don't find your ankles on the earth, it causes anxiety.
Yeah, exactly.
So not exercising is very dangerous.
So even on a daily basis, if even knowing that you've got a stressful day ahead, getting a chance to actually get your bearings before you start the day through a bit of exercise where you're feeling the earth and looking at the horizon, that sort of stuff.
Swimming.
But what if you're in the cities and things like that and you get in a car or in a train and then you go into a gym inside and you're on a treadmill and you're looking at TVs, or when you are actually travelling and when you're doing stuff, you're too busy looking at your phone. You're never going to get that point of reference. We're going to get a lot of anxiety. So you imagine someone not associating with nature at all, spending their time looking at a device, the electromagnetic radiations, all that sort of stuff, just driving them anyway as other stress triggers with 0 point of reference to know where they are in space and time, and someone comes up and goes, hey,
exactly. And so like for me, I went for a run this morning and, it was along the beach there down the Gold Coast and this is good. I mean, my feet are sore today, but mentally I'm very clear, and I think that is a really important thing.
Yeah.
Another thing that causes anxiety, and very quickly in a paper here, is being obese, which kind of ties into being sedentary.
Yeah.
That is a point of anxiety.
Yeah, it definitely does tie in that, but also, again, inflammation. The adipokines just drive inflammation, and vice versa. Yeah. The obesity may be a symptom of the inflammation as much as the anxiety is. Yeah, so these are big vicious cycles that we're seeing.
Oh, absolutely. It all ties in because, as you correctly point, adipokines are hormones released from fat cells. One of the classic ones that's inflammatory is leptin, tumor necrosis factor, and they, of course, travel the kynurenine pathway, which we've done a podcast on, so I won't allude to that. But that basically takes your feel-good chemicals and puts them down to an acid called quinolinic acid, which makes you feel anxious. It irritates things. So you can have a grounded inflammatory response, which makes you feel anxious. And that's why anti-inflammatories can be anti-anxiolytic as well.
Yeah, and also too, again, when we talk about the obesities and the sedentary stuff, we'll bring that up again when we talk about ego,
Yeah.
and that sort of stuff. But so physically, we're looking at genetic predisposition, we're looking at acquired techniques and acquired skills through early life events or prenatal or perinatal events. Things like abuse and violence, of course. TV and social media, it creates an unconscious bias of the world. Hey, there's a thing that not many people know, okay? Oh, I shouldn't say, that's a bit of a weird thing to say, but there's a thing I want you to know. Google Analytics and all these sort of Facebook stuff. You know, when you watch a video, whether you like it or not, when you watch a video, they record that. They go, hey, this person found that thing interesting. Give them more of that. They might buy one of them.
Yeah.
When you talk about stuff and when you use words and when you do searches, when you have all this sort of stuff, a lot of your data is being collected and they want to present more things to you that you're interested in. But that can give you a skewed vision of the world. For example, if you might see something interesting about a conspiracy theory or fact. You might like that, then you might follow that path of that hashtag. You might read more and more into that. Next thing you know, you're getting bombarded with that stuff. You're starting to think, oh, the whole world is a conspiracy. What's happening? It's all gone evil. If you're one of those people that gets off on watching violence and videos of people punching each other and stuff like that, a lot more of that stuff comes up into your news feed. The ratings that they work out on all the news, what people are watching, they then present more and more and more of that stuff.
Yeah.
The problem is we get this unconscious bias where we have a perception of the world that may not be real. Our imagination can create our own reality, and that is actually reinforced by things like Google that will give you specific information, specific for your taste.
Yes.
And what they think you like.
Yeah.
But the problem is they just keep reinforcing this. And it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy because you're basically going, the world's mad. Look, here's another video to demonstrate that. Here's another meme. Here's another thing. So what happens is people that get too much into social media, they get a skewed vision of the world, and often their fears, their anxiety is then portrayed out within their social media platform where they get presented a lot of these videos. It's an interesting strategy if someone wants to do it and actually just go out of your way to search for positive things and then see what happens on your social media platform, because you can do that. You can search for hashtags of fishing or outdoors or happy things or spiritual memes and quotes and positive stuff. You can actually look for those. And when you start looking for those and watching videos on those and liking those sort of memes and comments and just ignoring the horrible stuff you don't like, then your actual social media world will change.
Yes.
Your perception of reality changes. And by that, using your imagination, you have created a new reality. Because what we're going to realise is that past and future doesn't exist when you live in the present. And the fear, resentment, guilt, anxiety, they all live in the past and the future.
Yes.
In the present, there is no room for that. Because what the anxiety is concerns of what may happen or fear of the unknown of what's coming. And with anxiety, it might be fueled with resentment and guilt from things from the past. But none of that's in the present. If you can be mindful and present, then anxiety doesn't exist.
It doesn't. I mean, you could be fearful because from kids, you don't get presents from Santa. I mean, I'm picking something small. Or, is growing up a Catholic boy, it was like going to hell was the big fear that we were instilled with, and that's like being tortured forever. It's like, and so it was all kind of a bit of a worry, and so that is bringing the possible future to the present, and that's anxiety.
So cultural beliefs and things. And I want to do a podcast one day saying we're older than ourselves and our parents, because people forget 3 or 4 generations ago, there's a totally different world. Like we just think what we see now is all that ever was. Yeah. And I'm embarrassingly just got into my 40s where I'm realising now that I'm not that old, but I'm realising now there's all these other young people coming out saying stuff. It just seems so crazy. I said, no, you got to realise that 10 years before that or 20 years before that, it was totally different.
Yeah.
That's not a thing. Now with ego, I'm going to start talking a bit about ego.
Go for it.
Your perception of who you are or your perception of who you think people think you are is driven by your ego. If you are focused on your ego, or if you are fearful that you are not going to be able to follow through on what you've made a claim of, or you're not going to produce the results that people are expecting, then basically you're going to get a lot of anxiety.
Yes.
If you are making claims and statements or pretending to be someone you're not, like if you're trying to fake it until you make it, if you're trying, what I'm trying to say is if you're not being true to yourself if you've created a brand or an image that is not you, that is not real, then you have a constant hustle and a constant grind to actually create that. You know these words like fake it until you make it.
Yeah.
I don't understand that, because you don't have to fake it until you make it. Just be happy in yourself and who you are, and you can make it. Whatever it is, whatever make it means. But don't fake it until you make it. Just be who you are and try to be someone else and just do your thing. And you don't have anywhere near as much anxiety.
Well, it's like the teenage anxiety when you chatting up the girls and you're saying you're all this and or you go for a job and you it's way out of your league and you fake it and
if you get offended when someone corrects you, then that's ego.
Yeah.
Like if you get jealous, if you have this ownership, if you have this anxiety that someone's going to find out that you're not all that you've said you've been. Now, let me give you a good example. So for me, I used to be extremely anxious with public speaking. I still am. I still have an anxiety because it's a worry. There's a lot of things that I worry about with public speaking, but they're justified. In the past, I used to have exaggerated stress response to public speaking. Like it was a catatonic phobia. It was terrible. And actually, the biggest thing that really helped me was quite funny, because I had to present a seminar to doctors on anxiety. And I was extremely anxious. And as I'm reading through, it started off, what is anxiety, like we did today? What is anxiety, and listing off the symptoms. And I was just halfway through, and I just put it all down. I stopped looking at my slides and said, okay, let me tell you exactly for me what is happening to me right now, because I'm very anxious about this. As I was talking about it, my anxiety was lifting, because what I was realizing was that a lot of my anxiety that was coming from it was my ego, where I was presenting a seminar. My ego was saying, I'm the seminar presenter. I will be the smartest person in the room.
Absolutely.
And I had fear that if someone challenged me in the seminar or asked a question I didn't know, the whole thing's gone to poo. I would seriously, that was a nervous thing for me. And I would hate questions in case they asked a question I didn't know the answer to. And even to the point that even if I did know the answer, sometimes my mind will go blank because of my fear of their perception of me.
Yes.
And so that was the perception that I gave them. So I created an image. I said, I put myself out there thinking I'm the smartest person in the room. Look at me wearing a suit and all sorts of stuff.
Yes, I remember those days.
And you'll respect me because I'm standing up on a stage and I know all this stuff, and you're paid to come and see me talk and all that sort of stuff. But when I actually stopped and realised that, hey, I'm not the smartest bloke in the room. I can't possibly. There's no such thing as the smartest bloke in the room, because if you judge a fish by his ability to climb a tree, he's going to look like an idiot.
Exactly.
But then you flip it into the ocean and he's a genius. So this is the big point. When you realise that you have something to offer, when you realise that your goal is to help and to be good and to do something right, and you can own that, and you don't have to own the fact that I'm the prettiest boy in the room, I'm the smartest guy in the room, I'm the fittest or the strongest. If you're not presenting that thing where you're putting yourself up there where someone can break it down, then you have much less anxiety. And you have to understand a lot of that is ego. And you also have to understand that your ego also wants to protect other people's perception of you. For example, if other people put you up on a pedestal, if other people use you as a branding campaign, or use you to say, this bloke knows everything, or this bloke's the fittest, or this bloke's the strongest, or this is blah, 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 don't feel you have to own their perception of you either, because that's all still ego.
Yes.
So when I talk about ego, let me break it down. I'll just give you some examples of what, look at that. I took notes today because I'm going to write up a bit of a blog on this, because I think it's really important. Because, so with someone, how to know when you've got ego or when it's just your genuine spirit. So when you're outside of yourself, when you're trying to pretend to be something you're not, that's when it's all driven by ego. And that's ego does a lot for anxiety because, again, like I was saying, you're failing to meet people's expectations and you think that's bad. So, for example, with ego, you think security exists, where with your spirit, security is a myth. At any moment, it can be taken away from you.
Yeah,
so with an ego, you'll drive towards getting to retirement, or you'll drive towards building up an empire or something like that, because you think it's going to give you this security and protective shell, where it's not.
Yeah.
At any moment, it actually makes you more risk,
which is
more anxiety. With ego, you think you know everything. But with a spirit, you're actually experiencing things. So you're actually not living in the now. You know, when you're with an ego, you're thinking, oh, I've got to pretend that I already know all of this because I've got to project myself as this powerful thing. Selfishness is an ego thing, where contribution to society, and that is not. With ego, you're reactive, and you believe a lot. You're more fearful in competition. So with an ego, you're more worried about, you're thinking more like scarcity, or if he's got it, I can't have it. Or that tall poppy syndrome, this bloke's getting all the attention, that's supposed to be my attention. So that's all part of ego. You'll hold out on people, you'll withhold stuff and that sort of stuff you won't share. Usually criticism. You're focused on the past and the future, so you're not living in the now. Often you'll talk about things like resentment, you'll do blame, you'll do guilt. You can be very controlling because with ego you control things, you own things, they're yours, no one else can have it, you've earned this, you've built this, this is yours. Where in reality, especially other people, they're definitely not yours.
No.
You can never own a person. That's
not anymore.
Yeah, hurtful, avoidance, and it's about me. They'll talk about me, not me, but them, yourself. Spirit is different because you realise that security is a myth. You're more interested in experiencing a moment than knowing what that moment's going to be. And that's a really important thing. If you don't go in with a perceived expectation, because all disappointment comes from unrealistic expectations. If you expect a thing to go a certain way and it doesn't, then you can get anxiety and you can get panic.
Absolutely.
Where if you go in and just going, I'm happy to experience a moment.
Yeah.
I like it's like saying I'm a human being, just let me be. It's like there's no, just this is me.
Human being, not a human doing.
Yeah, or human done.
Human done, that's even worse.
So instead they'll accept what comes and they'll understand that that's part of the plan and their expectations aren't going to get in the way of that.
Yep.
We always talk about results, not excuses,
yeah.
So that's part of this sort of thing. And the result is what it is. There's no good news or bad news, just news. And that's removing ego, removing expectations makes it easier. They often, with spirit, you have abundance. There's enough energy for everyone. We're all happy to share. I don't have to own it. And if it needs to go somewhere else, then that's the plan. It can go.
Where it goes.
Yeah, and then appreciation and gratitude. They live in the present. They live in the now. With spirit, rather than resentment, there's forgiveness. Like seriously, why would you drink poison and expect someone else to die? Wandering around with resentment is actually feeling this guilt, this shame. You're torturing yourself.
Yeah, you are.
And this other person doesn't even know what's happening.
No,
so basically, when you forgive someone, you don't forgive it for them. You forgive it for yourself.
Yep.
So you can say, "Oh, cool! I give myself permission to not care about this anymore." And this is another important point. Sometimes people think they're having a bad day, and they'll say it's anxiety. Or really, was it a bad day? Or did you have 20 minutes where your emotional discipline was out of whack and that you've made some bad decisions, you chose that you're in a bad mood, now you feel obligated to stay in that bad mood all day.
Yeah.
People need to go back and have a look at that sort of stuff.
Years ago.
And so that's why you've got to forgive yourself and forgive others and forgive situations and just accept the way it is. Also, too, rather than a lot of guilt, there's a lot of understanding. And so instead of you just go, look, I know I behaved this way or I did this thing at the time, and that's me, I'm not perfect. Or someone else did something, you're not perfect either. No one's perfect. We understand. I forgive you sort of thing, And again, freedom. So with spirit, you think about unconditional love. You don't own anything. You don't have to conquer anything. A lot of people have got anxiety over relationships or perceived relationships, or they might really like someone and someone's kind of initiated that says we might like you too or whatever. Yeah. Then things just didn't work out perfect. And that's like, now that person can never have another. You know what I mean? Like these people, they own it. They got this jealousy. They got this thing, I need to conquer that mountain. A lot of times with ego and that, they'll keep people hanging on. They'll hold on to them. They'll just keep them in their circle, where with unconditional love and spirit and confidence, it's like, no, man, you're free to go. Come and go as you like.
Yes.
You're like a wild bird. You can come and go, do whatever you like. And that's the difference between spirit. But if your ego's caught up on it, then you can be watching social media, wondering what this person's doing, why haven't they called? That triggers a lot of anxiety.
Oh, yeah.
All of these things, just by making acknowledgement of where we might be driven by ego and where we can actually replace that ego with unconditional love or spirit, you can make a massive difference. And then you can deal with your gut-derived inflammation and pain and all that sort of stuff. So
very interesting. There's some great facts about. I know we've only got 4 minutes left or so.
We've got a shitload of time, Steve. Don't talk about time.
Oh, there's some interesting with cultures, as you said. Like, for example, about 7.3% of people get generalised anxiety.
Yeah.
Okay? Only 5.3% of African cultures get it, and compared to 10.4% of Euro-Anglo cultures.
Yeah, right.
So about twice as many Euro-Anglo cultures get anxiety compared to African cultures.
Yeah, right.
Now, what's causing that is interesting, because if you can halve anxiety in our white, way, then we can actually, learn from the African sort of heritage and say, well, what do they take a different attitude, or is their microbiome different?
What is it?
Well, basically, it was their microbiome in this study.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because the microbiome makes the chemicals in your brain.
Yeah. So when you talked about the tryptophan steal, the kynurenine pathway, that's related to that. And we do have a podcast on that, which is why we haven't talked about it a huge amount.
It's only part of it.
Yeah.
There's things like you heard of GABA-aminobutyric acid, which is GABA, and that's the thing that settles your brain down. That's made in your gut.
Yep.
Goes into your body.
Hey, just for guys, while we talk, just to put in perspective, so you mentioned earlier all this data is coming into your brain, and the more signals that come into your brain, the more your stress response will be.
Yep.
The way GABA works is it reduces the amount of signals getting to your brain.
Correct.
So it's like a chemical straitjacket. No, it's not. It just reduces, it's like a bit of a barrier. So for every 10 triggers you get, maybe one will get through.
Yep.
So then you respond with less of a stress
and
reaction.
You may have heard of Valium. That's how Valium works.
Yeah, and that's how in the natural world we've got Kava and valerians, and there's a lot of GABAergic agents.
And what
even
they
withania.
What they did with these in a study is, and they did it do it on mice, is they got human anxious people, took their gut microbiome, put them in germ-free mouse, and the mouse took on the emotions of the anxiety person.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing? That was only published last year.
Wow.
And it says the gut microbiome and mental health was the title of the paper. I love that sort of stuff.
So have a look for the people out there who want to know more about this. Look up, we did a podcast once on glutamates and GABA, and I think it was behaving badly and that sort of stuff we talked about.
Yep.
So we talk about the ratios between glutamates, which make glutamic acids that drive the stress response to be more anxious, and then we talk about GABAergic agents that calm it down.
Yes.
So that's what you're just talking about there.
Yeah.
And have a look at our gut-derived inflammation stuff and the tryptophan steal podcast as well to learn how the gut microbiome can trigger all those problems.
Yeah, it's called the MGB axis. Is the microbiome gut, biome axis. So it talks about the brain. Microbiome gut brain axis, and that's actually what it's called.
Say that again.
The MGB axis, and you can Google that. It tells you all about it. So that's interesting. There was studies done by the Burrs back in 1929, which showed that the amount of good oil in your brain can influence anxiety.
Yeah, cool. So with oils, the role of the oils in regards to anxiety, multiple mechanisms.
Yep.
One is controlling inflammation and prostaglandin pathways. Another one is actually if you actually have a look at the brain, don't take it out, but you get some pictures online or something, it's very oily. And all these little antennas and receptors that pick up on our brain chemistry, they're oil dependent. So you need a bit of a grease and oil change in your brain. And the main oils we're talking about in the brain's EPA, DHAs, and that sort of stuff, which are found in fish.
Yep.
But also you can make them from other vegetable oils as long as you've got the cofactors, such as zincs, magnesium, other nutrients.
And that's what I love about the multi-food. It's got all those cofactors in there to make the correct oils for your brain. And you use a great term, which is capable of. And you use that term a lot, which I love, because it means your brain's capable of making the good oils for the brain.
Well, there's no point and I do this a lot with nutrition. So I look at nutrition as making sure you're capable of achieving what we want. And herbs create a dynamic change. They force things to change. So there's no point trying to be too clever by forcing manipulation of brain chemistry when you realise that the tiny little cofactors, water-soluble B vitamins and things that need to be replaced every day are involved in the release and the breakdown of these chemicals. So without those basic nutrients, you do not know what you are capable of. So the first thing to do is to build a stable state, build a base foundation with which to work from, and that is making sure you've got your essential vitamins and minerals and your essential fatty acids.
Yes.
Making sure we've got those things, because your body cannot make those. So if you've got them, then your body is actually capable of healing on its own.
Wow.
Then we look at our physical lifestyle. We make sure we're doing our exercise. We make sure we are moving. We make sure we're not sedentary. We look at all this gut stuff. We assess our body. We do all those sort of things. And then we can use lifestyle changes, spiritual changes, herbal formulations or drugs if necessary to force things to move a particular way.
Yeah.
But if you haven't first made sure that you've got the basic B vitamins and essential fatty acids to build the structure to allow you to be in balance, then there's no point trying to force these things. Or there is a point, but don't judge them and say that this herb doesn't work for me because it may not be working because you may have a micronutrient deficiency.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's one of my little beefs with medicine in the area of mental health is if you go to a doctor and says, I'm suffering anxiety, they won't care about your omega-3s. They won't care about your gut. They will prescribe benzodiazepines or Valiums, those sorts of things. And that's sad.
But don't forget there was those studies. There were studies back around 2000. We should have pulled them out now, but there's studies back in 2000 where they actually worked out how to make antidepressants work. And they basically did that big meta-analysis and found iron, folate, B12, B6, omega-3 oils. If you didn't have the B vitamins and you didn't have nutrition, then the antidepressants didn't work.
Didn't work, yeah.
And in fact, it was worse. You got side effects.
Yeah.
So then they worked out the people that had a good base core nutrition, the antidepressants worked really well and they got less side effects. It also, those people were easier to come off the antidepressants when the time came
addictive.
because they are addictive. But normally it's not, I mean, most of those antidepressants, we just wean off them. But if you're weaning off them, but you have not corrected your imbalance on your nutritional deficiencies while you're on them, then whatever was going wrong that gave you that anxiety, depression in the first place has often snowballed behind the scenes and got worse because you've been managing the brain chemistry but not fixing your body.
So it wasn't a Xanax
the key
deficiency.
is, and this is the cool thing, this is why actually I don't mind antidepressants, people that come in the clinic and saying, hey, I'm stuck on these things. It's going, you're not stuck on anything, unless your doctor says so, of course. But
Disclaimer.
Yeah, quick disclaimer I threw in there. What we actually do is we work on the person. And I say this all the time, you don't treat anxiety, you treat people.
Exactly.
So you go back through and while they're on this medication to give them a stable state so they're not suicidal or homicidal or anything like that, we can actually work on the gut, we can work on the nutrition, and when that time comes when they're starting to think, I think these things are slowing me down. They give me weird dreams and making me feel a bit sleepy and things, I think I can come off them or reduce my dose. And then we start doing that, it's so much easier. They don't get anywhere near as many other withdrawal symptoms and side effects.
And as you know, of course, most of the serotonin, which is the anti-anxiety neurotransmitters made in your gut. So it's very related to your gut. I'm horrified that they still overlook that in medicine, the gut microbiome. I think
it's starting now. I think it's all going to change now to a certain degree. And it depends if they invent or patent a drug for us.
I asked Dr. Doug why they don't, and he said, I'll take out the expletive words, but he said, it's because they can't charge a Medicare item for it.
Yeah, it's probably right.
And I went, it's probably true.
Part of the system.
Yeah.
So let's have a look. So the main causes we're talking about, there's so many things. It's not just stress and emotion. We're looking at anything that triggers an immune or a pH change.
Correct.
The definition of a stressor is anything that makes a change in your body.
Yes.
So think about that. Could be absolutely anything. The way we treat it is to look at things like electrolytes. They're your on and off switches. So if you are stuck in an on mode, have a look at magnesiums and potassium in particular, because the actual manifestation of the survival response is driven by calcium influx. So the calcium influx into the cells will stimulate a muscle contraction, like your heart to beat or your chest to go tight. It'll make your brain think. It'll stimulate a shallower breathing and that sort of stuff. So part of this is a calcium influx that causes it. So using a magnesium to reduce the amount of calcium influx basically makes sure you have an off switch. So your calcium's your on switch, your magnesium's your off switch. Calcium comes out of the bones and teeth and will never run out.
No.
But we can actually become magnesium deficient by having excessive anxiety.
Very much.
So we need to top that up. Hey, another interesting thing while we're talking about magnesium deficiency, I've got a weird theory that's come about just in the last 48 hours.
Go for it.
You know that electromagnetic radiation that we talk about from Wi-Fi's and all that sort of stuff. You know how they tell how far it penetrates into your body?
How do they fail?
Oh, you look at Mr. Master Segway. You actually know the answer. It's ionizing radiation.
Yes.
It activates ion channels. Those ion channels trigger a calcium influx. So the actual mechanism of action whereby electromagnetic radiation can trigger anxiety, behavioural problems, inflammation, immune problems, potentially cancers, oxidative stress is actually through a calcium influx. So it actually stimulates, it's an electrical signal. So it actually stimulates an electrical signal within your body. Now, when you get calcium influx into a red blood cell or a white blood cell, there's some cool studies now showing how your with that live blood analysis.
Yeah.
And they expose it to Wi-Fi and it goes all mung. That's because what happens is if you screw up with a zeta potential, you take the positive charges off the outside of the cells by screwing around with the calcium.
It stops them sticking together.
Yeah, normally your red blood cells, white blood cells got positive charges, so they're like magnets, keep pushing each other away so they don't clump. That's what happens when you get this excessive calcium influx. The way to fix that is actually magnesium. All of these on switch and these triggers and this stress and anxiety and inflammation caused by electromagnetic radiation may be protected with a combination of magnesium and taurine. Because if you have a look at magnesium, it actually is the regulator for the calcium channels.
Yes.
And taurine holds magnesium in that gate. And so if we get excessive calcium activation, we get excessive magnesium depletion.
Yeah, amazing.
So it's cool. So
it's cool. And you've got to remember that electromagnetic radiation is pretty much the same as electricity.
Yeah.
In fact, that's how you generate electricity.
Thank God Tesla didn't get his plan. We'd all be dead, I reckon.
We'd be dead.
You know, this whole plan of Tesla making the crust of the Earth a source of electromagnetic radiation.
One big power cable.
We are living in we'd all be dead of cancer a long time ago. I believe I'm probably going to get some hate from the Tesla lovers here.
I'm a Tesla lover.
I'm a Tesla lover, but I don't think he would have gone through and made the whole world into a giant electromagnet so we can live in it and die of electromagnetic radiation.
Did I ever tell you how Edison proved or was trying to prove that Tesla's, because Tesla was a fan of alternating current and Edison was a DC current man. Edison, many years ago, of course, before, and don't Google this, is that he actually electrified an elephant, a live elephant, to show how bad AC current was.
Oh, that's a bit weird.
It was bad.
You get the shock value out of that.
It was like the elephant passed away.
Yeah.
Because he said, no, AC current's dangerous because, basically more voltage, the more danger.
Yeah.
But the less current you need to get power, because power is a
Yeah.
product of current plus voltage or times voltage. So, but that's how he's demonstrated.
He tried to trigger anxiety for people
to
not use it.
And that's exactly my point. He was using fear-based evidence. And you see that today. People come out and say, don't use don't see a naturopath, they're weird and they'll kill you.
No,
These sort of anxiety-based things is not evidence-based, and that will cause anxiety in people. People live under this sort of cloud. It's terrible.
Great. So electrolytes,
Yep,
really
electrolytes,
important.
potassium,
and
magnesium.
even more important than these days than ever.
Yes.
Adaptogenic herbs or GABAergic herbs, like we can use those sort of things to balance it out.
So of our range, which adaptogenic
So
herbs
basically, my favourite adaptogen's Schisandra. So Schisandra is really cool because what it does is if you're down, it picks you up a bit. If you're up and anxious, it calms you down. It also helps respiratory acidosis and buffers acid.
Yeah.
Now, if you build up enough acid in your body, it will trigger a stress reaction because your body's thinking you're dying of something.
Yeah, acidosis.
Yeah. And then what it does is, think about the symptoms of acidosis: tightness, palpitations, panting. Exactly. You've got to pant the acid out. That is hyperventilation associated with a panic attack.
Yeah, of course.
You dissociate. You actually head separates from your body. All of those are symptoms of metabolic acidosis.
Yeah.
Or respiratory acidosis.
Yep.
Sport-induced asthma, all those sort of things are associated with respiratory acidosis. Schisandra is really cool for that.
It is good. And it's funny because a lot of people on the website, say, CortRx is so wonderful to help you sleep and blah, blah, blah.
But that's the Schisandra. And also the withania and turmeric are both GABAergic.
Yeah.
But they're mild GABAergics in comparison to something like a kava.
Yeah.
So a kava's GABAergic to the point that your tongue goes numb and your body feels all floppy. But that's maybe just the dose I take. But and then but with the withania and turmeric, nice GABAergic. Schisandra is brilliant. So that's in our CortRx product.
I took two about an hour ago, and there's no way I'm falling asleep.
No, it's different because it's state dependent. So even the studies on Schisandra show that it'll pick up your cortisol in the morning when it's needed and drop it at night where it's not.
Exactly.
So kind of cool, eh?
Well, Beck, my wife, who takes it just before bed after she does an evening night shift, after treating stressful patients,
Yeah. So at night it works totally different.
Yeah.
Yeah. So regulating pH, through acid and all that sort of stuff.
pH is a measure of acid.
And the way to measure your acid-base balance, manage your acid base is electrolytes.
Yep.
And look at it's bugger all of its bloody food. We did a funny little experiment at home the other day where we actually had the bushfire and we're drawing stuff with charcoal.
Oh, yeah.
And I was talking to the wife and she asked me about acid base. I said, here we go, measure the pH of this. This is how they worked out the food lists.
Yeah,
because all they did is burnt the food and then measured the bloody thing. Doesn't tell you what it does in the body. So the way to regulate is to look at your energy production pathways because most of our acid problems is metabolic acidosis from poor energy production. Electrolytes are our main buffering agents, and
Yep.
then otherwise we've got the herbs. So
Yeah.
just make sure you don't have shit in the carby and you won't have acid, because that's it. We look at, you build up acid because you've got incomplete combustion.
Yeah.
So, and then with a car, it'll blow smoke, but with us, it just builds up as waste that we've got to pant out.
So exercise, because that'll help anxiety and your acid.
Yep.
Right? And your,
Focus on your breathing. Make sure your breathing's right. And then, like I was saying before, when you're feeling yourself in a stressful situation and these things are happening, just work with them. You realise your brain's going to try to tell you to find the horizon. Just find the horizon. Find the exit. Concentrate on your breathing. Wiggle your toes. Make sure you know where the ground is. Get
Yep.
your heels in the ground. That sort of stuff. And then basically work out where you are in space and time. Take some deep breaths and get that breathing back under control. And that's a very important part during a stress response. Another important thing is that I want to say, people, is express that you are emotional. Don't express your emotions. So instead of expressing your emotions with like panic and anxiety and trying to get the hell out of there or punching someone and run, express that you are, acknowledge that you're emotional, and express why you're emotional, or express that way. So a good example of that is like, well, you could be sitting in a situation and you might think, and I've got to prove to this person that I know everything. This person's judging me. I've just been asked a question that I wasn't expecting. I've got a bit of an adrenaline rush and now I've got a bit of sweat. Can that person see me sweat?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe they can see me sweat. Oh, now I'm worrying about why I'm worrying. I'm worrying about my worrying.
Worry, yeah.
And then I worry about why I worry so much about my worrying. And then it's why am I worried like this? And so basically you get this big vicious cycle that forms. So then you start going, oh shit, this person's looking at me now. I still haven't given them an answer.
Yeah.
And I'm now starting to present. Now I'm starting to sweat. Then I wonder if they did that course that I did, because in that course that I did, they said when someone's sweating, it means they're lying or they're uncomfortable, or and then I have to do I wipe that sweat off now?
Yes.
Because when I was in that course, they said another way of diverting against an answer or a question or lying or to pick a fraud is they'll quickly wipe their face when you ask them a tricky question or something. So like what happens is you start. Now that is all ego based. That's I've presented myself out to be a person that's got no fault. I believe that I'm a perfect person, or I believe that this person thinks I'm a perfect person.
Yep.
At that moment, if you stop and say, hey, I'm experiencing emotions, or you even do it this way, what you just said to me is making me feel this way.
Yeah.
Or I feel like you're attacking me now.
Yeah.
Or you can even say, hey, did you see that?
Yeah.
You just asked me a question. I just immediately just went bright red. What a weird thing. I don't know why I feel like you're attacking me now. Or I don't know why I feel this way. And then these people will go, oh, and often two things will happen. The person will go, hey, I didn't intend to make you feel that way.
Mostly.
I was just trying to ask a question. I know I'm not attacking
Sorry
you.
about
We're just
that.
working
Yeah,
this
yeah.
together. It's like, and it's not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. Especially if you say things like, man, I just got this immediate rush, like I felt this need, like you're attacking me, and I felt this urge to punch you in the face or something. And these people might go, no, well, don't do that. Like I wasn't actually feeling that way. I didn't mean you to feel that way. That's what a normal person would do. An ego monster would use that against you. And if an ego monster goes, then what you need to do at that point is realise that he's driven by ego or she's driven by ego. I'm not an ego monster.
No.
I never claim to know everything.
No.
Oh, but I tell you what I am here for. I have some amazing things I can share with you. Or I have something I can do. My intended purpose is good. I'm here to help. And I have stuff that I can offer. You can take it or leave it. This isn't about your perception of me. It's not about my perception of me. This is just about this. So it's important to say there's no good news or bad news. Stop. There's just news. It's important to acknowledge that you're feeling emotional for some reason. And instead of expressing your emotions by punching someone and running, or trying to hide, or trying to pretend that you know everything, or trying to pretend you're perfect, or trying to fulfill this person's belief about you, just go back and own the fact that you've had an emotional reaction. And now that you have all of this information we've given you, you might even be able to say, my guts haven't been right.
Yes.
Oh, my feet, oh man, I just can't handle it inside. I don't do well indoors. I'm a nature person. I like to see the horizon.
Yeah.
So it's really important to express that you are emotional and express why you've become emotional rather than expressing your emotions. Because the exact same thing happens. You get that stress release and then you can move on. The difference is you haven't punched someone and run away, or you haven't hit off bolted and gone into the corner or sat there and hyperventilated. You've actually said to someone, I'm feeling this way. Something you've done has made me feel that way. The person will either apologise and change, or they're going to not, and then you're going to realise, oh my gosh, you're an ego monster. I'm not playing your game.
Well, exactly, and it's somewhat, you're absolutely 100% correct. And the worst offenders, I'm going to sound sexist here, are men, because we are the leading cause of death in men from 15 to 44-year-olds. This is this week's studies, is suicide.
Yeah.
Now, to get to that point, there's some serious anxiety, depression, stress going on. And men are terrible at, expressing their feelings.
Yeah.
They think it's a weakness, or they think, they can't communicate. What you're saying is very mature and very correct, but a lot of men they have this ego of having to be right and
having to present
terrible.
a particular image.
Yeah.
They got this particular brand, or they got this particular image they need to present. They can't actually go through and show weakness.
Yeah.
But what they got to realise is being humble, being kind and being real is not weakness, that's strength.
Have a go at yourself. Have a bit of self-deprecation. It's an Australian way, and enjoy it.
Understand, and it's so important because anxiety is fear of the unknown. Now, but educate yourself on your own body, but don't just beat yourself up all the time. Go, it's not my fault, I'm a sook or something like that. Go through and go, what else could it possibly be?
Yeah.
Am I inflamed? Is this? Go through all these different symptoms. And if you have lots of dis-ease within your body, it's going to predispose you to stress.
Yes,
so
very much so.
So be humble, be kind, own the fact that no one's perfect, and then don't ever feel as though you have to portray an image that someone else is expecting.
Yeah.
Or don't go and set yourself up for failure by creating this bullshit fake image that you can't possibly maintain.
Yeah.
And you see people that talk about hustle and grind, and they're driven by ego. You see the people that you can't correct them or you can't critique them. That's all ego.
It is.
And you see these people that have to have everything, and the competition, it's all mine, and it's all ego, and that sets you up for a lot of anxiety.
It's and the anxiety of the unknown. I remember I was telling you when I had my arthritis in my spine and it was painful, and you think, what is going on with my back? I can't move it. X-rays, no, you're fine. And it's like, what? And the anxiety was horrendous because what the hell's going on? You knew something was there. And this sort of fear of unknown. So educate yourself in these situations. That's the whole thing.
Man, one of my favourite things, you see that my favourite photo, there's a photo of a match burning. And you're looking at they're looking at the shadow of a burning match or a burning candle.
Oh, yeah.
So you can't see the shadow of the flame.
No.
Because that's light.
Yeah.
So darkness can only exist in the absence of light.
Absolutely.
And so what we're talking about here with the fear of the unknown and with this anxiety, if we can shine a light into the darkness. So if there's this area of unknown and usually it's the stuff within your own body, which is the weirdest stuff. The hardest stuff to work out is what's happening inside you. So working with your coach, your friends or your professionals or parents or family, or just through your own self-realization and awakening, try to enlighten yourself on the darkness within your body. Understand what these weird little symptoms are, and understand that your symptoms of anxiety are never going to kill you. They're actually a survival response.
They are.
And so you don't have to worry about them leading into a heart attack or something. You have to understand that it's giving you everything you need to survive, not die. Then what we've got to do is work out why we're stuck in that state when your survival where your stress triggers hard things. So,
what's the cause?
So it's very important. So if you then understand that darkness can only prevail in the absence of light, and anxiety is a dark place full of self-consciousness, confusion, beliefs and cultural things, and this whole image of this whole world that you should be a certain way, but you're not.
Yes.
And that's the big problem. So you shine a light on who you really are. Work out who you are. Work out what your job is, what your mission in life is. Be humble about that.
Absolutely.
And realise if you're on a good mission, then you're a good person, and anyone that attacks you is probably an agent of evil. And ignore those sort of people.
Yeah.
And these ego monsters are like that,
Absolutely. Great.
And
great
think
summary.
of the positive. And also think about positive strategies. For example, good example, if you're late for something, instead of saying, oh, shit, sorry, I'm late, say thank you for your patience. Thank you for waiting. If you get out of that habit of feeling, oh, I've always let someone down. If you feel like you're saying sorry for letting you down, it's like, oh, thank you for giving me that shot. You got to turn it around that other way. Acknowledge that no one's perfect. You're not perfect. You came from good intentions and you did good things, and therefore you feel as though you don't deserve to be attacked.
It's absolutely true.
Be confident within yourself that way.
That's brilliant. We got any other final closing thoughts there? You got some notes there.
No, that's enough.
It's a great thing to finish on.
But I do want people to realise that it's there is so much of it's a spiritual sort of thing. If you can build up your own confidence, self-worth in who you are, and don't feel judged by what people's perception of you is,
yes,
then you reduce your anxiety significantly. If you think if you're feeling self-conscious that someone's seeing something about you don't like, then you acknowledge it, you own it. You bring it up first. Don't wonder if they're going to bring it up, and then you realise it's not even a thing.
Mate, it's been fun.
It has been fun. I really hope we help some people.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to write up a bit more of a blog about this and try to... I don't know if I explain myself well, and I hope I don't offend anyone when I talk about ego, but we all have it. It's just... what I really want people to do is be self-aware. I want people to go and analyse things in themselves that they can change.
Yes.
Because I know there's plenty of things in society that we can blame, but also understand that those things within society that you can blame, you have created this reality for yourself. So it's your ability to also change it.
Yep.
You can change what you see on social media. You can change what you see on TV. You can change how you react in a situation. You can change, it's very hard, but you can unlearn beliefs and cultural bias, and you can try to be open-minded. And that's what I believe is a very, very important point to deal with anxiety. So hopefully we helped a few people today by shining a light in a little dark area.
Yeah, very much so. Great, well said. Well, look, thank you for your listening patronage today, and we'll be back next week.
It's truth.
So goodbye for now. Just want to be official.
Aroo.
Bye.
Bye. Red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather. Me, 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 me. You. Visible Illness series. Yeah, we need to do that. We need to film record a little soundbite for it. Visible Illness. Yeah. Then you have to be on a. Delete that bit out.
Wow, that's a bad word. My ears are polluted.
Your ears are bleeding and crying. An angel just died. So